for the annual business session, and an unexpected and delightful event of the afternoon was the adjourning of the meeting in order that all could gather in the library to hear one of Tacoma's gifted daughters over a national radio hookup. The singer was Miss Marie Louise Quveli, daughter of Mrs. Kristen Quveli Sr., longtime alumna. The occasion gave the club an opportunity to appreciate the new maturity and power of her mezzo-soprano voice. Miss Quveli has been appearing for the past season in one of Broadway's most successful musicals, Moss Hearts and Married an Angel. After this, she was given her own Sunday radio show called Continental Varieties, and she starred in several Broadway musicals before returning triumphantly to Tacoma in 1940 to sing in the old Stadium Bowl with the Seattle Philharmonic Orchestra. Born into an enormously stimulating existence, surrounded by fascinating people and enjoying frequent trips abroad, these children grew up speaking 4 or 5 languages with a deep appreciation for the world of art. At the same time, they were all superb athletes, as the old country club records record, proficient in diving, swimming, tennis, golf, and horseback riding. Animal lovers all kept their homes well stocked with exotic birds, dogs, and even pet monkeys, which often got loose and startled the guests at odd moments. Despite their age difference, my grandparents shared a personal magnetism and a remarkable talent for hospitality. Their outgoing personalities drew all ages to their various charming homes, whether for relaxation and fun at their country club cottage or to share the warmth of the elegant, unconventional drawing room with its significant collection of art objects brought with them from so many different countries in the Lakeview home. Grandmother had a flair for decorating and design. She was the most hospitable of hostesses and operated on a grand scale. There was absolutely nothing small or petty about her, and she was never too busy to take on projects, charities, and entertainments. She worked tirelessly side by side with my grandfather in his fight for tuberculosis legislation in Washington State, and during his terms as county health officer, she was personally responsible for successfully organizing the first visiting nurse program. She was one of the pillars and founders of the Tacoma Little Theater, directing plays, designing sets, sewing, and designing costumes, and opening her home for benefit performances. Her indomitable spirit prevailed in the face of many personal disasters. One of the early newspaper clippings relates an elegant dinner to honor husbands at Quveli Gore and mentions the remarkable old library with its 15,000 rare volumes. The following year, this magnificent old Lakeview home with its enormous art collection, antiques, and priceless books burned right to the ground when spontaneous combustion occurred in my aunt's art studio. The tiny, insufficient Lakeview Volunteer Fire Department could do nothing for lack of hydrants and equipment. And that was, I believe, in about 1936. In 1935, excuse me. In 1937, another Aloha clipping from the TNT related that Aloans visited the new Quveli Gore, and quoting from the paper, risen like a phoenix from the ashes of the old. They enjoyed a drama day presented on the raised marble dining room of the stunning new home, which my grandmother had designed herself. The Quevelis are gone now, all of them. Theirs was a bright, splendid existence which splashed upon the lives of those about them with color, passion, warmth, and humor. The very fact that at age 70 I am still hearing funny, glorious stories of their lives and travels is evidence that they brought color and excitement to all who knew them. I wish I had been there in that era to really know them too. An Annie Wright classmate of my Aunt Mary Lou called me from New York after reading the write-up on the Quevelis in Mary McCarthy's new book a few years back. She had lived at the Hotel des Artistes in New York at the same time as Mary Lou, and they had gotten their breaks on Broadway together. I will never forget them all, she said. They surrounded their friends in a bubble of excitement and color. They were the most generous friends I have ever known. Now, because of the fire, most of the pictures we have, instead of albums of wonderful photographs, are ones that were collected from family after the fire. and Cy has very generously made them into slides. I don't know how he did some of them because some of them are so weathered and yellowed and had been tucked into people's books. They had not been meant to be preserved as the first albums of the puppets. So, yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, forward. Do we need the lights out or is it okay? Okay. This is in Norway, in the Lillehammer area where my granddaddy was born. This is a typical gore, probably from, I would say, 16th century times. There's a huge central house and all the little outbuildings, and you can see a lot of the storage sheds are raised. There's grass growing thickly on all the roofs, and on most gores, the goats graze on the roofs, which is really delightful. Back up one. It's not backing. Oh, okay. This is another scene from the Gudbrandsdal Valley. This is a very different kind of countryside from western Norway, which is much more rugged. This is very green. There are millions of waterfalls, literally. Absolutely beautiful. Now forward.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. This is the Stavkirke, the traditional early Norwegian church in about 1000. Olaf Tryggvason, a Norwegian king, was converted to Christianity, and he brought Christianity to Norway with the sword. Typical Viking. And these beautiful stavkirkes, which have the Oriental influence, are found all over. This one is in the valley, not far from where my grandfather grew up. And here is our drive up to see the Quveli estate when we were there in '57. This picture has faded terribly, but what looks like a cloud was a beautiful rainbow. And it was, as I say, like getting to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Beautiful country. Here's my grandfather when he first came to Tacoma. There's the mustache that he grew, so he would look older than his 24 years. This is my grandmother, not right after she was married. I don't have any pictures. Those all burned somewhere. But probably after they'd been married about 10 or 15 years. And they had a house on North J Street, and then they moved to a house at 601 North Yakima, where they lived before they bought a country club house, which was really more their summer cottage, and then eventually bought a big piece of land over near Lakeview, which adjoins the Miller Harkins Airport. Here's my grandpa, and that's my father in the little sailor hat riding along on his rounds. I think that's my favorite family picture. No wonder Daddy wanted to become a doctor. And that, by the way, is down on Pacific Avenue, and it doesn't look muddy there, but that's what I've been told. It was knee-deep in mud. This is their home at North J Street. And the piano, which you see there on the right, is one that we have in our home out at Lillehammer, which was what we call our place. The chair that's back there in the background under the mirror with the curved serpents and carved serpents came from Norway with them. And this is at 601 North Yakima. This would probably be the very early 20s. There's a bust ahead of my Aunt Mina above the piano there, done by the same sculptor who did my grandfather's bust. This is actually an earlier picture. This is their first home. And this was on South L Street, I believe. And this is one of the homes that burned to the ground. They had this old chair, which is in our living room, now at Lillehammer, originally had wonderful finger weaving, beautiful Norwegian finger weaving. And we left it on under the new cover to preserve it. it was falling apart, and this came from the Quveli door along with the footstool in the way. And there's grandmother, I think probably around 1910, as much as we could figure. There's the carved horse from the Gudbrandsdal Valley. This horse, when my grandmother and granddaddy established their house out here at Lakeview, they used the horse as their signpost, and grandmother had some flatter horses, but with exactly the same coloring and design, made into a railing on a big balcony around her living room. And she also had one hanging at the entrance to Quveli door. And when we moved to our house in the country, which is out near Lake Bay, we adapted the same horse for our sign, only it's in slightly different colors. So it's following through the family. And here's a chair that we saw in another picture that's from Norway. Intricately carved serpents. This was a newspaper clipping about my grandfather's crusade against the White Plague, which of course is tuberculosis. And he really devoted the better part of his career to the study and eradication of tuberculosis. This is a picture of the family in their Yakima house at 601 North Yakima, probably about 1920. And they were obviously getting ready for a great occasion. That's my grandfather, of course, on the right, and grandmother, and the youngest girl, Mary Louise, my father in the background, and my Aunt Mina with her hands crossed. She was a very dramatic child, and she always posed in that manner. And then my Aunt Catherine. Here's Dr. Sigmund Freud in his study in Vienna. My father thought that was one of the highlights of his career because his father had studied with Freud. And in 1928, when my father and grandfather went again to Vienna, he studied for over a year with him. And it was shortly before Freud's death. I think he died about 2 or 3 years later. This is one of the pictures that has somehow survived. This is the American Medical Association in Vienna, and my father is there with the black hair in the very middle of the picture, and to the left of him, unfortunately blotched, is my grandfather. And there is the ballroom at Schönbrunn Palace, where the Quevelis were privileged to have danced. And then the children danced upstairs, which I thought was a charming story. My husband and I visited this ballroom in Vienna, and we really could stand there and close our eyes and hear the Strauss waltzes and just imagine everyone in their elegant, wonderful gowns dancing the Viennese waltz. This is a picture of Roald Amundsen, who was such a good friend of my grandfather's, and as I said in the paper, this is the ship, the Yoa, which he traversed the Arctic, not Antarctic, but Arctic ice pack in. He was actually the first person to go all the way from east to west through the Northwest Passage. It took him 2 years, and he was iced in. But this is a little ship. It's only 64 feet long. And there's Aunt Mina, very dramatic again. I believe she was about 14 at that time. And there, later on, when she moved first to Hollywood, she married a wonderful radio producer who was the first man to produce Shakespeare over the radio. And they first were in Hollywood, where he did this, and then they moved to New York. And he did a wonderful series, Shakespearean series, about a 2-year series. There she is in her wedding gown. My mother always says she thinks that's the ugliest bride she's ever seen. She looks so stark and unsmiling, but she was a glamorous lady and full of talent. And there's her husband, Brewster, the radio producer, Brewster Morgan. When my grandmother's house burned to the ground out here in Lakewood, he had been writing a book on Shakespearean drama. And he had had a secretary, and they'd been working for months and months, in fact over a year. And he had come up here to stay with my grandmother